That's a movie. Hey everybody, Sol here. I have only one rule here: if it's animated, I'll comment on it. And as you probably know, I am a rather serious gamer. Or at least I was a serious gamer back when I was a spindly, shitheaded 15-year-old with an intense hatred for school, no friends, and access to a 360 console. But now that I'm all of that, but no longer 15 years old, I find that I don't really have much time to play games anymore, what with having 5 jobs, 3 cats, bills to pay, babysit, etc., etc. With my hectic schedule, you think I probably play a lot of casual games, like Angry Birds, in the laughably minuscule dregs of free time that I have. And while I do partake in some casual games like Layton Brothers, Mystery Room, or Pocket Mortys, I just really haven't partaken in the casual gaming market. But animation is the name of the game here, not video games, so it's time to talk about a casual game that ripped off a game called Crush the Castle and has even less story to go around. Let's dig into Angry Birds movie. The Angry Birds movie is a Finnish-American CG animated film produced by Rovio Animation and Sony Pictures Imageworks, based off the iOS and MIMO game Angry Birds, released originally in 2009 and then a billion more times over the following 7 years. The film was distributed in May 2016 by Columbia Pictures, and a sequel is supposedly in the planning stages as of now. Okay, time to see if a movie based on a game about causing property damage to green-skin mental defects can make a good movie. No use wondering about it aloud, let's just fling ourselves into the Angry Birds movie. It's interesting to think how a plot as basic and outlandish as the game version of Angry Birds could possibly be adapted into something more entertaining and longer than the average coffee break or bowel movement. And for what it's worth, I don't think what plot the movie drags up is all that terrible. But hold up, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, aren't I? On an island nation populated almost exclusively by flightless birds that value emotional repression over nearly everything else, a bird named Red is an angry, angry bird. After rightfully being pissed off at an asshole father who accuses him of being late to his son's hatch day party, Red is sentenced to anger management classes to iron out all that pesky free thinking from his birdie brain and whatnot. But when a strange new porcine race suddenly arrives on their shore seeking friendship, Red, as well as 2 other members of his anger management class, must get to the bottom of their suspicious behavior. Okay, so the plot isn't exactly blowing anybody's wig off the top of their heads, but what the hell can you even do with an IP like this? Honestly, while the story is something I'd generously call bland and formulaic even on my nicest of days, I'd hesitate to call it bad. No, I'm saving that particular label for later on, ladies and gents, so let's just move ahead to the characters. So the loosely defined protagonist is Red, a bird who is mercilessly cynical, aloof, sarcastic, and above all else, angry. He seems to hate everyone and everything, which is something I can definitely sympathize with, because everyone around him are clueless, perpetually contented airheads who live shallow lives and pump out babies like the world is recovering from a recent apocalypse. Well, Red certainly has his moments, and his anger isn't the only note he has in his repertoire. I just find it impossible to like him. Not because of how he acts towards others, but because he clearly hates them with a passion, yet paradoxically longs for their company anyway. But then he exiles himself to the beach and makes no effort to patch things up with the locals. It's like someone had 2 copies of the script, which got blown out of his hands during a rather blustery day, and he had to put them all back together in one pile to avoid being fired. It's as though the movie wants us to empathize with his desire to be embraced by everyone, yet at no time does he ever put in the effort to make that happen. So, to sum it all up, Red is just alright. He doesn't get under my skin as much as I thought he would, but he's certainly no Daniel Day-Lewis. Speaking of getting under my skin, the side characters are Chuck and Bomb. Chuck is a hyperactive, fast-talking, irritating smear of rodent mung that speeds all around the island, making a complete dipshit of himself. Well, I'll give Chuck this accolade. He certainly made me hate Sonic the Hedgehog a little bit less. Take every single most annoying trait from every maddening speedster character ever created, have their atoms smashed in the Large Hadron Collider, and then paint it yellow. What would be birthed from that wouldn't even come close to how aggravating Chuck is. The movie thinks he's a lot funnier than he actually is, and it thinks it can get away with his urethra-grating attitude because it implies that he might be gay, but that's not an excuse at all. Every second Chuck is talking is like having icicles shoved under your fingernails, so that's my cue to move on. Then there's Bomb, who, other than spontaneously exploding in a manner that leaves him completely uneviscerated like a bargain bin splosion man, has absolutely no personality whatsoever. He can't even rightly be called an angry bird, because his exploding isn't intentional in any way. And 99% of the time, he's just kinda chill. That makes it easier on my hate-engorged heart, for sure, but it doesn't do much for my boredom-atrophied brain. But let's move on to the good things now and... Huh? What? Oh, I forgot to talk about the villain. Oh, the villain, Leonard! Yeah, you mean the one who's totally useless as a villain, is completely ineffectual as a major threat, and I would be better off talking about the drywall than him? That one? Okay, well... Alright. Yeah, he sucks. But now let's crack open the eggshell of good things and... Whoops. Alright, now I did have to dive pretty deep into the barrel to find some legitimate compliments, and I do believe I've unearthed a couple. For one, this movie is rather visually stimulating. It has an intense palette of colors that glue your eyes to the screen in such an insidious way not seen since My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Probable brainwashing aside, I really do enjoy the overall design of the film, including the birds themselves. I'm glad the creators decided to give them limbs in their adaptation, because watching a bunch of quadriplegic avians ineffectually rolling around like your average McDonald's addict would have been 100 times more embarrassing to watch, though probably a million times more hilarious. Also, without being too generous, for reasons I'll get into later, there are some moments where they managed to slip in a genuinely chuckle-worthy line or gesture. Nothing that made me guffaw until my anus leaked, but hey, it's better than nothing, right? And so, as always, we must bid goodbye to the glittery-eyed, sexy lass of the good things, and woefully greet the smelly, venereal disease-carrying horror of the bad things. Note to self, make comparisons less disgusting. Since there's really no other way to talk about the bad things without exploding into a 10-page rant, it's time to break out the old tried and true Sol's laundry list of bullshit once again, so I can catch all the dribbling chunks of viscera raining down from this tortured corpse of a movie. You guys ready? Well, here we go. Number 1. Angry Birds? This movie is called The Angry Birds Movie, yes? Birds. As in more than one bird, plural. But really, this movie only has one angry bird, which is Red. The other birds whom it implies to be angry are Chuck, who's just loud and obnoxious, Bomb, who explodes but only in a literal sense, and Terrence, who just growls and looks to the side. Oh sure, the movie pretends that all the birds get angry at one point, but they don't see the actual benefit of anger in the long term. Speaking of that, number 2, anger is bad! Fascism is good! Anger is an important emotion. It lets us react when things aren't working in our favor, it helps us expunge pent-up rage and stress, and it lets peddlers of extended warranties work another day pulling remotes out of TV screens. But what the birds in this fascist society believe is that being angry is the worst thing anyone can be with zero tolerance. And, well, I think Timmy's dad put it best.
That's why everyone smiles every waking moment.
Or else?
Now you're getting it.
Number 3. This movie is pure punishment. One of the compliments I dry heaved onto this movie is that it occasionally made me chuckle, and I did mean that sincerely. But what doesn't make me chuckle is seeing a pig-related pun every 2 goddamn seconds. A pun every now and then is fine in my book, but I swear to Mountain Goat Jesus, there isn't a single joke from the pigs that isn't a fucking pun or reference with a word replaced by a pig-related substitute. If genuine wit is like a perfectly timed fart, then puns and references are like farting so hard you shit down your pants and then try to clean it up with your tongue. Number 4. The story has more gaps than a gap-toothed bumpkin. I made that earlier script blowing away in the wind comment in jest, but the more I think about it, the more that seems to be the case not just for Red's disposition, but for the whole movie. There are multiple times where it feels like the movie is telling 2 or 3 different drafts of the story. Like one where Mighty Eagle, the town's protector, isn't real, but then he is real, but when people see him, they don't seem particularly surprised. Quite a few of the plot threads wobble around as inconsistently as one of the semi-collapsed towers in this movie's namesake game. Number 5. Infanticide! As someone who regularly eats babies for breakfast, I can understand this mindset from a psychotic's point of view, but I have to wonder what Leonard and the other pigs are thinking. Their goal is to take all the eggs of the island and eat them, but as they should be aware, these are fertilized eggs. As in, there's no yolk inside, just a semi-formed chick fetus or a fully grown infant bird. Why on Satan's glorious earth would you want to eat that?
Not unless you want a mouthful of soft, unborn baby chick.
Number 6. Oh, just look at that cute babies! The baby birds in this movie suffer from what I'm now going to refer to as deadly dentist disease, named after that insufferable dentist kid from Hotel Transylvania 2. Deadly dentist disease's primary symptoms are having huge sparkly eyes that hypnotize people, cute little gestures that sickeningly tug at people's heartstrings, stunting of growth to maximize amount of cuteness per cubic foot, and a mastery of shameless manipulation that makes people's money feel about 10 times lighter in their wallets. See also the girls from Despicable Me and Michelle Tanner from Full House. Only you can save these characters suffering in the throes of the dreaded deadly dentist disease. Won't you help these children become more than just shameless corporate pandering? Number 7. Any joke worth doing is worth doing 100 times. There are a few running gags in this movie that the creators must have just spent the entire weekend braying themselves silly at like donkeys high on ether and bath salts when they wrote them, because they're repeated to the point that they lose all humor pretty much entirely. Pretty pathetic, I have to say. Number 8. This movie's soundtrack is certainly diverse. This may sound like an odd criticism, but it uses licensed songs up the butt, but none of them follow a theme. There's an angsty bullshit song, a country song, an 80s rock penis substitute song, a rap song, and a nice rickrolling just for good measure. There's being eclectic, and then there's trying to appeal to such a broad demographic to sell your soundtrack that you have no focus at all. That's kind of indicative of the movie as a whole, actually. I think that's all I can muster for the list today, but to be perfectly frank, as far as movie adaptations of video games go, this one really isn't all that bad. I mean, just think of what the creators had to work with. You wouldn't expect anyone to build a golden mansion out of Weetabix, now would you? The Angry Birds movie is a brightly colored, but ultimately sullen and soulless attempt to cash in on a popular franchise with blatant manipulation that appeals only to mindless children or very gullible adults. Honestly, this movie becomes quite a bit better with the sound turned completely off, but that's not the compliment it sounds like. I didn't set out to hate this movie, I genuinely wanted to enjoy it, but other than a few small laughs and eye-catching visuals, there's nothing that shines in this eggshell-thin outing. I give The Angry Birds movie
1.5 eyes out of 5.
So, The Angry Birds movie. Is it watchable? In a way, yes. Like I said, the movie becomes a lot more watchable if you watch it with the sound off. So if you're viewing it in a doctor's office or on a Best Buy demo TV, then yeah, it does become a bit more watchable. Is it enjoyable? Well, I mean, none of it made me want to rip out my molars in frustration, except for the pig puns. So, I guess, kinda, I mean, not really. Is it memorable? Well, considering that the franchise itself is infinitely more memorable than this insignificant fluff film, it stands to reason that the only reason they're making a sequel is because of
money.
There are definitely worse ways to spend your time, but there are definitely better. Like playing the game itself! serious? Wow, I suck. Want to stay up to date with all the latest EyeofSol news? You can follow me on Twitter as well as on Facebook at twitter.com/EyeofSol299 and facebook.com/EyeofSol. I update them every day, so if you want to check out news on the show as well as updates, just follow the links here. Hey everybody, thanks a lot for watching my review of the Angry Birds movie. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, I would appreciate a like and a share of this review, as well as a subscription to my channel, because that always makes me smile. Like the opposite of an angry bird. If you want to check out the previous Sol episodes, you can see the annotations playing on the video right now. Or if you want to check out my various social media sites, you can see my links to my Twitter page and my Facebook fan page, as well as my new Patreon account there on the screen for you, as well as in the description. If you have an idea for an animated series or movie you want me to comment on, you can leave me a message in the YouTube comments on any one of my social media sites, or just let me know in any way you can think of to let me know what you want to see, and I'll add it to my list. Okay? Thanks again for watching everybody, and I will see you next week for another review.